To make this quilt, it is really quite simple, and we're going to be using a collection of 2.5 scraps to make this particular quilt. Now, I have certain cuts here from jelly rolls. I've also cut down some fat quarters and joined them together. I've used a bias join here just to ensure that it sits nicely. Okay, so do not just butt them up together and do a straight stitch and cut, but do it on the bias, and it's quite easy to do that. All right, so once you have everything sorted out with your strips, you need to make some strip sets. I have two selected here to show you. I've already started cutting from them. However, the reason why I have two is that I like to interchange and use different blocks together. So you can make a number of strip sets. So make sure you press down, make sure the seams are nice and flat at the back as normal, okay? And we're going to cut the strips that you need for to making the block. All right. So I think I'll use this one for now and just demonstrate. I think I've already cut enough from the other one. And so I'm just going to make my cuts now. And then once we've done that, I'm simply going to start building the block and show you how to make it. Okay. My match here is a little bit funny, so just bear with me at the moment. So I've counted my blocks across and I'm just going to cut. Okay, make sure your blade is sharp because mine is a little bit dull at the moment. Too much cutting, I would say. All right, and so I'm going to show you how to make the block now. It's quite simple. We do need some background fabric, and I'm using white, and also you need to cut them in some squares. So we are going to add some cornerstones to this particular block here, okay? I'm using this green because I want to emulate sort of the patterns that you would get from an actual flower, and so I'm having the green as my stem, okay? Just to try and make the block look a little bit cohesive altogether. So you also need a number of strips, and you can cut variety of colors. And you would see, I mean, make it as colorful as you want to. You'll get an idea once you see the whole layout. Anyway, so let's continue with this now. So what I'm going to do is to simply just bring in another one and we're going to make the block together. All right. So this is from the other strip set that I showed you earlier. Okay. And you can see why I wanted to use different colors. Yeah. So using my cornerstones, I'm going to add them. I think I added, yeah, that's it. It's supposed to go there. Okay, so we're going to do cornerstones as normal, as you would if you've done these before. Is draw a line and just simply stitch on the line. Okay, so I'm going to pin that so it doesn't move, and then draw my line and stitch, and I'm going to do that for all of them. Okay, so what I did was actually did all of them, pin it, and then sit at the sewing machine so that it was all done in one, basically. Okay, and then I'm going to stitch on the line and move. So I'm just going to draw those on. All right, so I think you get the idea of that. So let's move on now. So again, as you can see, I'm mixing the blocks around, okay? So the more you cut from your strip set, the easier you can mix your blocks up to make things easier for yourself. And that way you get a more variety of color throughout the whole quilt rather than using the same strip set for each flower that you're actually going to make, okay? All right, so here we go again now. And notice the placement is different in this one. So the other one had the two in the middle and two at the end. Okay. So I just wanted to make sure you observe that. That's what I'm pointing out here to you. All right. If you want also, you can add in the middle as I'm just explaining there. So if you want to put one in the middle, obviously you'll make it into two, into four. So you'll have each four separated. So it'll be strip sets of two rather than strip sets of four. And then you can do a smaller bud in the middle to emulate a flower. But again, entirely down to you. I'll put all the details in the description for the patterns. So at least you have some ideas if you want to throw it together like that. All right, so here's how it looks now. Okay, so at the end, you can see the line is stitched on, and obviously it's pinned there. If you want to use your little small scraps of triangles, you can, but yeah, I'm not going to worry about that. So you're going to cut it a 1/4 inch away from the edge of that stitched line now that we drew on before. Okay, and that's the first sort of laying out of how to make your flower. So again, once you've done that, I'm being a little bit organized and putting all my little pieces into a box. Yeah, right. As if I'm going to make something from that. Why do we bother with these things? I really don't know. But anyway. Right, okay, so open that back out, just press it back. Just make sure it's nice and flat. Okay, and then you can put a little bit of iron on it just so that it stays because obviously it's a small piece, so it will stick up. All right, so let's make the bottom bit now. Okay, and I'm trying to use colors within the strip set so that it looks cohesive. You need some background squares again for this particular one. And then if you want, you can use, remember the color I talked about, the green to emulate like the stem and the leaves and stuff like that. So again, I'm going to sew on to my longer strip here. And again, I'm going to do the same thing, and cut it together. All right. So remember, you're kind of making a V shape with this particular cut here now. Okay. And notice where the larger squares are placed. Okay. And again, you're doing the cornerstones at the end. And again, you can see the marked line, so it's nice and clear for you. All right. And notice that V shape there so that you can see it quite easily. Okay, and I've already stitched it on the line. You're doing the same thing, just drawing the line, stitching on the line, trimming away. Okay, do remember with a larger piece though, you can obviously save that and use it for something else. This is a larger piece I would most likely use rather than the smaller, tinier piece. Just cut it off because I think I was just repeating myself, so I just kept that quiet, to be honest, guys. It wasn't anything you missed. And again, just press it back as normal. Okay, again, notice the V, the larger V in the middle. That's really important, okay? So that you get it right. Otherwise, it's quite easy to turn it around, trust me. Very, very easy to turn it around, okay? Okay, so you can see it come into shape here. It's a very quick block, all right? And now we're going to add that stem in the middle so that you see what it looks like. And I'm choosing something here that's green. Again, remember I talked about that. I just wanted the colors to look, wholesome together. So it kind of works really. Okay. Yeah, and that's simply it. So we're just going to sew this on, front sides together. And this is what it looks like. So by this time, I've made quite a number. Okay. So this is a whole block together. Again, if I didn't say this before, I am using scraps for this one. Okay. So you're going to see different strip set come together as well. So I'm just repeating myself here as to, how to make it. You add the stem in the middle, so front sides together, and it's the same thing. That's how it would look. Okay, guys, I hope that makes sense to you. But again, it's very, very easy to do. It's not difficult at all, but it looks really good. I've used a brown stem here to emulate the colors in the flowers. And this is some pieces of batiks that I had here. So that looks really, really nice. Making this block really wholesome and pretty. Really, really nice block. Really quick, simple, nice block to make. And here's the one we started to do earlier, so you can see the difference. All right. Okay. So that's that for now. It's another one. I just thought I'll show it to you and see how it comes together with the blue stem and how I've just actually used the colors around just to make the whole thing cohesive, guys. Again, I'm just giving you ideas. You don't have to do the way I have done. It's entirely down to you. But I just like to make sure that each of the colors is represented in each of the blocks and bring the whole thing together. That's just the way I work. Here's another one again, giving you some examples. Okay. And this one I actually used some fabric again with some leaves on it for the base of the flower block. And you can see I've just used a sort of semi-cut or fussy cut, I should say, to get the stem looking like that. But it's all scraps. It really is all scraps that I've used, even to make the strip set. As I told you before, it was some of them was fat quarters that I joined to make the strip set as well. But just so that it is a scrappy block, but again, I'm trying to just choose colors that looks nice together. Okay. Now I wanted to bring this one in to show you how to make a different flower. Okay. And this one is more pieced together. The stems and everything else, stays the same, or the base of the flower. But with this one, it was a slightly different. And again, I'll put all the details in the description box. So if you wanted to, you can make, a couple different of the flower tops so that it looks different. And then again, have that little red bud in the middle. But it's entirely down to you. It just gives a variety of visual appeal to the quilt, basically. All right, so we need to make another block now. So we're making a butterfly block. What I have chosen here, again, some strips of some leftover fat quarters. And I've chosen strips like this for a particular reason, because I'm looking for the color concept and the lines here to, again, represent the butterfly wings. Okay, so that's what my mindset is at the moment in choosing these particular fabrics here. Now, we are going to cut. Remember, when you're cutting your strip set, just keep it nice and flat. Again, make sure that the back is pressed down flat. It just makes it sit better. I think sometimes when it comes to strip set on the mat easily when the seams are pressed down really nicely. Okay, so we're going to cut now, and I'm going to cut a number of these here. What I will try to do though is if there is any seam lines in terms of the bias cut, if it's like joined in the same place, I will move away from that and not cut. But okay, but that's what I'm going to do here. So I'm going to continue with the cutting, and then I will come back and show you how to make up the block for this particular one. Measuring and making sure it's right. I've done that incorrect. It needs to go there. It just looked awkward. That's it. It's opposite each other. So don't make that mistake like I did. That's it. And the reason why I just remembered is because I realized my ends wasn't free, because my wings needs to go there. So just be mindful of those things. And I've done so many and my brain just still forget the orientation of it. Now, another thing you need to remember as well, and I use the pins just for this purpose, is that I pin where I am going to cut, because sometimes when you do so many, even though it should come automatic, sometimes you switch off and you don't concentrate on things and you just simply forget what you're doing, like what I just did just now. So what I tend to do is the area in which I need to trim off is what I actually pin. And I do that all the time. So again, I'm pinning the corners. And you need to mark it again, just like you did for the other the flowers, etc. that we made. So I'm just going to pull this apart so I have some space to pin. Mark that there again. And then these two in the corner here. Just going to turn that. And hopefully this makes sense to you. But as I said, once you've done one or two, and and what I would advise you to do is to just simply make one and keep it right next to you, so that you can always double check that you are pinning them on correctly. Because the idea here is whatever you've pinned on is what you're actually going to stitch together.
All right, so these are your joints that you need to stitch on. And so the next thing we need to do now is to mark from point to point. And again, I would advise you to do this, because what you can do is just take it over. I mean, I think everybody has seen the snowball technique, and this is nothing new, but I just think getting the rhythm and doing the same thing over and over helps. So you mark it there, and again we are going to stitch on this line, okay? And again, once I stitch on this line, it then becomes the fact that I'm cutting a 1/4 inch away. All right, so you can even give yourself a little arrow there just to remind you that once you're cutting on this side, and hence the reason why I've pinned it. So it's just a visual reminder that I am cutting on that side. And it may seem silly, but as I said, sometimes doing so many can you get sort of not thinking, if you know what I mean. You sort of do things without thinking about the next step, and that's when the mistake happens. Okay, so just like as you've seen before there, where I just like, oh, okay, something's gone wrong here, it doesn't look the same. You know, so so those are the things you just need to be careful of. And another thing you just could double check as well is that each marking should be a mirror image of the one that you are going to be cutting, so they all should be the same. So if you can notice there that there's a little V there, there's a V there, there's a V there, and of course there's going to be a V here as well. So just those little things help just to remind you of where you are. Okay, now so what we're going to do now is to simply stitch on the line all the way around, and then we're going to trim off. Okay, and once you've done that, you're then going to sew these two together. All right, you're going to sew them the front sides together, and they should line up without any issues because they are all the same size. You've cut it the same size based on the height that it actually was. So let me show you now how that looks like. Okay, so you need your black strip in the middle here before you join these two together, because remember we're stitching them front sides together, and they're going to open up into these two being that way. Okay, and then you join it by the strip, and this strip that you're going to be needing is 1.5, and again I've used scrap for this, and I'm just going to trim this down into 1.5. In total, we need to make 4 of these. And again, you will just stitch it on. Okay, and you can see your butterfly is shaped there. All right, so again, relatively easy. Same snowballing throughout the entire quilt top. So it's the same technique over and over, just to ensure that you're marking your lines and you're pinning so that you know where you're going. What you can do is get all of them ready, just like I have in the back here, some leaves, etc. ready. I have this one as well done, and the same has been done. Everything has been pinned so that it reminds me where I'm actually going to cut, because it's very unlikely that you're going to start your quilt from top to finish. So sometimes, you know, marking things down so that you know where you are when you come back into it is easy to move on. Okay, or as I said, another reminder is to give yourself a little arrow like that, that you know that is where you're actually going to cut off. And as I said, these are the little things that makes it a lot more easily for you. All right, so let's go do that now, stitch this together, and then I'm going to show you what the quilt top looks like. So I'm going to see you in a moment. Okay guys, so this is the layout of which I'm going with. Now it's a bit of an offset layout, so don't get worried. All the details will be in the description for the pattern. All right, so don't worry about it at all. So I'm just going to take you through briefly how I've laid it out so far. So I've done now I didn't really play around with too much with the layout in terms, so whatever flower landed next to each other was fine by me. It is a scrappy quilt, and I just like the scrappy quilts to be just sort of free movement without too much thinking about it. And sometimes that's a really good way to just express your creativity. Just let it flow, just let it do. No thinking, just do. Okay, however, with these two here, they're very close to each other, so I know I will have to move that, otherwise it's like, whoa, what's the point, right? Anyway, so this is how I've laid it out. So in this first row here, I will be attaching a 2.5 there, just to separate them, otherwise they'll be very close to each other. We will have that sort of look there, and again, that makes a nice pattern, but I don't really want that. That's not what I'm going for. So you can choose a different color for your background fabric. I mean, I've chosen white because that's what I have, and that was the only solid plain fabric I had. Had I had aqua, I definitely would have used that, because I thought aqua would have worked really nicely with this. All right, but whatever background fabric you have will be perfect. So again, 2.5 there, and I'm going to do that for each of them. So some of them are just slotted in there. This one is actually stitched in. All right, so I've just slotted these ones in here just to fill them in. I haven't finished all of them at the moment, but that's the layout. So going back to, that's the first row. Okay, and the second row now, again, start with another flower, but there is a butterfly, and because the butterfly is obviously not the same width or height, this is the reason why your layout is going to be offset. So again, I need to put in another 2.5 strip there, and that will come to the end there. Okay, and then obviously another strip is going to go in the middle there. However, you're probably wondering, well, what's going to happen with this space? This is going to be my quilting area. The way I've planned it is that this area here, which takes on the whole width of the butterfly, is going to be my quilting area. In terms of my intention is to do some nice antenna movement for the butterflies. Hence the reason why each of them will have a space at the top of them there. So this will be my sort of quilting area here, or my, free space for quilting. All right, so I hope that makes sense to you. Once it's all stitched together, I will show you what the whole quilt top looks like. But this is what it looks like now, and it was just to give you an idea of the layout. So hopefully that will, because I know sometimes the more steps you have, the easier it is for you to comprehend what you need to do. So just looking at it there. So again, I'm working my way down rather than across. I know usually we will work our way across with the quilt, but because of the layout, I'm working it all the way down. Okay, and then do the next row again, and again you can see all this space here. As I said, it's going to be my quilting area, because I have intentions of doing some nice curls and swirls from my antenna there for the butterflies. So hence the reason why I've designed it that way. So that's where it stops at the moment, and I shall show you what the completed quilt top looks like. Okay, so this is what it looks like. It is not completely stitched together, and I just wanted to show you really, before I stitch it completely together, how it comes together basically. So let me just take you down a little bit closer so you can see the layout exactly. So it's obviously 4 across and 5 down, and as I said previously, before I filled in all of the areas, is how it was going to be stitched together. So for example, you will make your first row here first, and I'll just pull it apart so that you can see what I'm referring to. Okay, I've just separated that. So make this row first, and then you will make this particular row here, and I'm going to separate all of them. Okay, so this is your second flower that is connected by a 4.5 inch, I think, thick border or inner sashing, And this is my quilting area up here for my antennas for my butterfly. That's another sashing here, just like the first one over here. Okay. So what I have done is, instead of adding the sashing to here, I've added it to this particular area here. So we're putting it together in sort of partitions or quadrants, really. Okay, so you have 3 areas in which you will stitch it together. These 2 I have to put together. Okay, and the reason why I've done it this way, as I said, is so that it's offset, because I want to give the impression of a garden theme rather than it just laying out in rows. I mean, ideally what you can do is just simply make 1 row all the way down of butterflies if you don't want to offset it in this particular way. So you can just have a middle row, for example, of butterflies and then the flowers around it, or you can have 1 long row coming down for the butterflies. But I decided was to offset it, and in doing so you obviously need to fill in these spaces, and so therefore your sort of inner sashings here would be bigger than, say, the normal ones on this side here, for example, which is the width of the actual flower, whereas these ones here turns out to be bigger because of the butterfly, and again it turns out to be the length here as well of the flower that incorporates that space which is missing, which is on the previous slide you just looked at for the video. So that's how the whole quilt top comes together. What I have been doing also is using up any extra scraps, and this is going to be the borders. So again, I'm keeping it at 2.5, and so any scraps that I had left from making the flowers, I'm going to cut them down to make it 2.5. Whatever I have, I'm literally going to cut them down, and I'm going to put this as my middle border. All right, everyone, here is a finished quilt. It measures 60 across by 77, so it's quite rectangular and long, as you can see. All right, so let's go in and have a look at the blocks. So here is the butterfly block that we made together. It looks awesome, doesn't it? As well as, I think I showed you this one here of the flower block, that one there as well. Notice the difference in the block where the cornerstones came together in the middle, and this one here, it's from the sides. All right, but overall it looks really awesome. I'm loving it. Very nice. And this is a scrappy quilt. This is the one I showed you with all the boutiques that was made with this particular block here. Very, very nice. I do love this butterfly here. It's one of my favorites. It's beautiful and blue, and I love the way I did the quilting on this one here, where I followed just the movement of the colors itself. Looks really awesome. Really, really awesome. This is the one we did together. Isn't that beautiful, guys? Really, really lovely. I love the way how it shows the trail of the body of the butterfly, and I did the antennas. Really, really nice. Really, really nice. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, because it was a real fun one for me. This is a very beautiful young baby, or I shouldn't say baby, girl's bedroom quilt. Absolutely gorgeous. And I love the way I brought in the balance of the scraps on the borders. It's just a very, very, very vibrant, beautiful quilt. The quilting itself, I'm going to go in a little bit closer and you can see it's quite big, to be honest. I didn't do anything small on the flowers themselves. I just did really big quilting that started off from the middle. Like this one here, I just went round and round. You can't see it very well. Let's try and go in a little bit closer. I'm just going to find another one. Again here, very big quilting. Let's look at this one. It might show up more on this one here. Yeah, the blue shows off a lot more better. And you can see where I've done with the leaves here. I try to make impressions of leaves with actual quilting. But the flower itself, I just went round in circles. Again, this one here, very large quilting, guys. Nothing that, you know, is really tiny, because I didn't want to do anything tiny. I don't think it's a quilt that needed tiny quilting. This one, you might see the circular. There you go. Much better on this one here. But overall, I'm loving this quilt. Love the antennas with the butterfly. Again, I just did random quilting with it. In this space here, I did this sort of leaf shape, and I use a pink thread on it, very girly, and I use a gray thread for the antennas just to show up the quilting. But overall, I think it looks awesome. What do you think? Let me know. Description box down below. What do you think of the whole quilt? Loving the blue on the borders. And if you notice, I only did 2 of these piece border here, and 1 on that side, and again 1 on the other side there as well. And I just simply use the scraps. And if you don't believe me, you can see where it is. Look, you can see that's piece of the butterfly scraps. That's piece of the scraps from the boutiques for the block. And it's just from the balance of the leftover of the strip set that I just cut down and use. The pattern, if you'd like to make one, is in the description box down below, and you can make yourself one. But it looks beautiful. Awesome, awesome. Very, very beautiful girl's bedroom quilt, or even a boy, you know, but absolutely gorgeous. Let me show you the back, which I think is the most beautiful for me. So on the back, I just use white, and you can clearly see all of the quilting on the back, just so much more than what you can see at the front. Very, very beautiful. Look at that. Now you can actually see the quilting properly. I thought it was really nice just to add a plain white background and simply just use it with the thread to show off the quilt. Because sometimes, you know, you spend all this time on this quilting, you don't necessarily always see it on the back, do you? But to see it like this, it's pretty awesome. Pretty awesome. Let's look, and let's find a piece of where the butterfly is, and that is the butterfly there. Can you see that there? That's the actual butterfly quilting there. But yeah, guys, so I hope you enjoyed the tutorial. Do like and subscribe for more. Let me know your feedback down below, and I would love to hear what you have to say. So again, the quilt measures 60 by 77. Lovely size. Absolutely lovely size, and such a beautiful quilt. Really such a beautiful quilt. All right, guys, I know it's slightly upside down, but yeah. Bye for now. Happy quilting, and I will definitely see you guys in the next video.